While I was on my honeymoon, my neighbor paid $500 to get into my apartment, trashed it, then sued me for water damage to steal my rent-controlled unit. I came back to mold, ruined stuff, and a court summons, but she didn't know I had footage from the hidden camera I never turned off. I was still dragging my suitcase down the hallway, sunburned, exhausted, and stupidly happy from what was supposed to be a perfect 10-day honeymoon in Maui, when I smelled it. That sour, wet, rotting stink that hits you in the back of the throat before your brain even catches up. My building in Long Beach, California is old, but it's never smelled like that. The closer I got to my apartment, the worse it was. And when I finally reached my door, I saw tiny curls of swollen wood around the frame, like it had been soaked and then forced open. My stomach dropped. I unlocked the deadbolt, pushed the door open, and my heart nearly stopped. Everything was ruined. My couch was covered in fungus. The hardwood floor had buckled like waves. My books were sagging on their shelves, soaked through. A layer of greenish mold crept up the walls like something alive. It looked like my place had been underwater for days. I stood there in silence, suitcase handle still in my grip, mouth open, brain refusing to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a leak. This wasn't an accident. Something impossible had happened. Then I saw the envelope. It was taped to the inside of the door, neat and official. I ripped it open with shaking hands. A lawsuit. My neighbor, Lee, the woman who lived one door down and had always been overly curious about my rent-controlled unit, was suing me for water damage to her apartment caused by my negligence. Negligence. When I hadn't even been home for 10 days. I stumbled through my apartment, pushing aside soggy towels someone had tossed over puddles, slipping on warped boards. My honeymoon glow was gone. All I felt was dread and this weird numbness crawling over my skin. Then I looked toward the ceiling. There, over the living room, was a jagged hole, like someone had hacked through fake drywall and tried to make it look like a burst pipe. Except the pipe above had clearly been cut, not burst. Cut clean, deliberate. My phone buzzed, a text from my building manager. "We need to talk ASAP. Lee filed a report and says she warned you about the leak before you left." My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I had never spoken to her about any leak. Hell, she barely spoke to me except when she made those weird comments about how wasted my low rent was on someone so young. I sank onto what used to be my rug and put my head in my hands. My apartment was destroyed. My honeymoon money was gone. And now I had a lawsuit waiting for me on day one back. But the thing that finally made my pulse settle wasn't fear. It was the sudden memory, clear as day, of the tiny black camera I had installed behind the front entry vent 6 months earlier, after a package had gone missing. The camera I had completely forgotten about because nothing else had ever happened. The hidden camera facing my front door. The hidden camera with motion alerts. The hidden camera with cloud backup. I opened the app on my phone with shaking hands. My breath caught when I saw the notifications. 27 motion alerts, all from the week I was gone. And then I pressed play. What I saw in the first 5 seconds made me drop the phone and whisper, "Oh my God," because it wasn't a leak. And it sure as hell wasn't an accident. And the person on the screen wasn't just the maintenance guy. It was Lee herself. Before all this, before the mold and the lawsuit and the honeymoon from hell aftermath, I honestly thought Lee was just annoying. Not dangerous. Not someone who would crawl through my ceiling like some deranged raccoon, destroy my life, and try to steal my home. When I first moved into the building 2 years ago, she seemed normal enough. Mid-40s, intense eyes, a voice that always sounded like she was trying to prove something. She introduced herself with a plate of brownies, but immediately followed it with, "So how much are you paying?" Just curious. When I told her my rent-controlled miracle number, her face froze, not even subtly. She blinked 3 times like she was buffering and then said, "Wow. That unit should have gone to someone with a longer rental history." Weird thing to say, but whatever. I brushed it off. Over the next year, the weird moments stacked up. She'd make comments every time we passed in the hallway. "You know, your apartment gets so much natural light. Mine barely gets morning sun. Lucky you." Or, "Management made a mistake not raising rent sooner. They're too soft on people." Or my personal favorite, "If you ever think of moving, let me know first. I'd love that unit." She said it like she was asking me to sell her a winning lottery ticket. I tried to be polite. I didn't give her anything personal. I didn't tell her when I was traveling. I didn't invite her in. I didn't trust her. Something about her energy felt pushy. She acted like my apartment was something she was owed. But the real turning point came 8 months before the honeymoon. One night around 11 p.m., I heard someone jiggling my doorknob. Not forcefully, but testing it, checking if it was unlocked. I froze in my bedroom and grabbed my phone. By the time I got to the peephole, no one was there, but the hallway light had just clicked off, meaning someone had moved. I reported it to the building manager, but he shrugged it off. Probably someone drunk or confused, he said. I didn't buy it. That's when I installed the hidden camera behind the vent. I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't even tell my fiancé. I figured it would catch package thieves, or at least give me peace of mind. And for 6 months, it recorded nothing unusual except Amazon deliveries and the occasional neighbor walking by. Then, 3 months before the wedding, Lee escalated. She stopped making small talk and started making passive-aggressive digs about my cheap rent anytime she saw me. She once said, "People shouldn't get deals they don't appreciate." I didn't even know what that meant. She didn't explain. She just walked away. Another time, she cornered me near the mailboxes and said, "You know, California tenant law is changing all the time. One mistake and boom, somebody loses their protected status." She said it with this little smirk, like she was imagining it happen. Looking back, it was a warning, or maybe a promise. The week before our honeymoon, I ran into her while carrying out recycling. She asked, way too casually, "So, how long will you guys be gone again?" I lied. I said, "Just a weekend trip." She stared at me for a second like she knew it was a lie. Then she smiled, that weird, tight smile she does where only one side of her mouth moves. And she said, "Have fun." I remember the way she said it. Not friendly, not warm. It sounded like she was already planning something. But even with all that, I never imagined she'd bribe the maintenance guy, break into my home, trash everything, and fake an emergency just to kick me out. I never imagined she'd go that far. And I definitely didn't know the full story behind why she wanted my apartment so badly. Not yet. The night after I discovered the destruction, I barely slept. I kept replaying the footage in my head. The way Lee moved through my apartment like she owned it. The way the maintenance guy looked nervous. The way they whispered like teenagers sneaking into someone's house to drink. In the morning, I forced myself to start pulling things together. My honeymoon suitcase was still barely unpacked, but now I had to deal with insurance calls, mold remediation estimates, and the building manager acting like I was the problem. He called me at 9 a.m. sharp. "Look," he said, sounding irritated, "Lee already submitted photos from her unit. There's water damage on her ceiling and wall. She says she warned you about a leak before you left." I told him the truth. She never said a word to me, and there was no leak. But he cut me off with, "You've always been a good tenant, but this is serious. If negligence is proven, the owners can terminate your lease." That word, terminate, made my stomach twist. I asked him a simple question. "Did you give the maintenance guy permission to enter my unit while I was gone?" Silence. Then, "He told me there was an emergency." I knew then that the maintenance guy was lying to protect himself. But what really got me was the tone in the manager's voice. He didn't sound concerned. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded annoyed, like this whole thing was an inconvenience for him, not a complete disaster for me. After that call, I sat on the one dry spot in my living room and watched some of the footage again, this time carefully. Through tears, anger, shock, whatever cocktail I was feeling, I slowed everything down and studied it. The first alert showed the maintenance guy unlocking my door with a master key. He looked around, hesitated, then let Lee inside. She was wearing gloves. She walked straight to the bathroom, turned on the tub full blast, and stuffed a towel into the drain so it would overflow. The maintenance guy kept saying, "We shouldn't do this. This is too much," but she talked right over him. They ruined everything systematically. She dumped buckets of water across the floor. He smashed the ceiling panel with a wrench. She kicked over my bookshelf like it offended her. She took photos as she did it, probably for her lawsuit. But the thing that made my blood run cold was the moment, at the end of the third clip, when she walked up to my living room window, looked outside like she was checking the street, then turned back toward my front door and said, "He'll never fight this, he's too soft. And once he's out, that unit is mine." She said it like she'd been rehearsing the line for months. That was when my anger started to take shape. Before that moment, I'd been confused, terrified, overwhelmed. But hearing her say those words out loud, so smug, so sure she'd already won, something hardened inside me. Still, I didn't know the full scope yet, because the escalation wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just the footage or the lawsuit or my landlord acting like I was guilty until proven innocent. 2 days after I got home, I found something that pulled everything into focus. Something that showed Lee's obsession went deeper and darker than just wanting my apartment. It started when I checked my mailbox. Inside was an envelope with my name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper that made my hands shake as I read it. And what it revealed connected Lee to something I never would have imagined. The envelope in my mailbox wasn't official. No stamps, no markings. Just my name written in small, careful handwriting, the kind you'd see on a school permission slip. For a second, I thought it might be from a neighbor offering sympathy or asking what happened. But when I opened it, a single photograph fell out, and a note that made my stomach flip. The photo was grainy, clearly taken from a phone, but I recognized the people instantly. Lee and my landlord. They were sitting together at a small table outside a coffee shop a few blocks away. Not just sitting, leaning in close, talking like they were plotting something. Her hand was on his wrist. He was looking at her like she'd just told him something interesting and possibly profitable. The note under the photo was typed on a cheap inkjet printer. "You don't know half of it. Check the county eviction filings." A neighbor who's tired of her too. My hands went cold. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew exactly what to check. I pulled up the county court website on my phone and started searching the landlord's name. The results popped up instantly. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at, just a list of case numbers, dates, and dismissed filings. But then it hit me. There were 6 eviction attempts in the last 2 years. 6. Every single one was filed by my landlord against different tenants in rent-controlled units. And every single one had something in common. The tenants all lived in units next to Lee. My pulse started pounding. My throat tightened. I clicked through the first case, then the second, then the third. It was a pattern, a perfectly timed, perfectly coordinated pattern. Water damage, noise complaints, unauthorized guests. Maintenance issues ignored. Lease violations that never existed. Each case had some odd, minor incident that escalated into a full-blown eviction attempt, always originating from a complaint made by her. And in each case, the eviction failed only because the tenants fought it. I felt dizzy, like the hallway was tilting under me. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just a jealous neighbor. This was a system. Lee wasn't trying to steal my apartment on a whim. She had done this before, multiple times, and she had help. And suddenly the photo made sense. The weird closeness, the landlord's frustration when talking to me, the maintenance guy willing to risk his job for $500. This was a coordinated setup. But the real gut punch came when I clicked on the most recent dismissed eviction case, one from just 5 months before I moved in. The tenant's last name made my skin crawl. Rodriguez, my old upstairs neighbor, the woman who moved out suddenly 6 months ago and wouldn't look anyone in the eye as she left. I remembered the movers rushing. I remembered the door slamming. I remembered hearing her say, "I can't deal with this anymore," on the phone. She left because of Lee. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just obsession. This was predatory. And then, just when I thought I couldn't be more blindsided, I got a text message that almost made me drop my phone. It was from an unknown number. "If you want proof of why she wants your unit so badly, check the storage room under the stairs. Look behind the old water heater." I stared at the message, heart pounding, fear creeping up my spine. Someone was helping me, someone who knew things, someone who wanted me to see something. And whatever was waiting behind that water heater, it wasn't going to be good. It wasn't going to be normal. It was going to be the thing that finally showed me who and what I was really dealing with. I didn't go to the storage room right away. I should have, but something in me hesitated. Maybe instinct, maybe fear, maybe the fact that everything about this situation already felt too big, too coordinated, too dangerous to walk into alone. Instead, I took a breath, grabbed my phone, and decided to get organized. If Lee and my landlord had done this to other tenants, then they were practiced. Strategic, comfortable playing dirty. I couldn't afford to react emotionally. I needed to think like them, cold, planned, methodical. But I had one advantage they didn't know about: the footage. So I sat at the tiny corner cafe across the street, where the Wi-Fi was decent and the air didn't smell like mold, and I started building my case. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. A revenge plan. First, I downloaded all the clips from the hidden camera, every angle, every timestamp. I uploaded copies to multiple cloud backups and emailed them to a fresh burner account I made on the spot. I wanted the footage safe in 5 different places. Then I made a spreadsheet. Yeah, I know how unhinged that sounds, but spreadsheets make me feel like I have control when everything is falling apart. I created columns. Date of entry: people involved, damage caused, audio notes, possible violations, prior cases, connected to Lee, corresponding landlord filings, evidence sources. By the time I finished entering everything from the footage, my coffee was cold and my hands weren't shaking anymore. Then I pulled up the county records again and dug deeper into the old eviction filings. I started cross-referencing the addresses, dates, and building complaints, and something stunning emerged. Lee always filed her complaints right before lease renewal season, when rent increases or terminations could be pushed through. She wasn't just obsessed, she was strategic. This was a pattern she had perfected, working side by side with a landlord who stood to benefit from every rent-controlled tenant forced out. My anger crystallized into something sharp and steady. They wanted to play games with people's homes. They wanted to weaponize fake emergencies and phony complaints. They wanted to pick the wrong person at the wrong time. Fine, I would destroy them with their own methods. But first, I needed the thing that mystery person hinted at, the thing hidden behind the water heater. I couldn't plan a full retaliation without knowing what cards Lee was hiding. I waited until most tenants were at work before I headed into the storage room. It was dark, damp, and smelled like rust. I moved past the broken bikes and old cardboard boxes until I reached the corner with the ancient water heater. My phone flashlight barely cut through the shadows. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Just pipes, dust, a few spiderwebs. But then I noticed a thin piece of plywood leaning slightly forward, like it wasn't mounted properly. I gripped the edge and pulled. It came off too easily. Behind it was a narrow cavity, maybe 2 feet deep and 4 feet tall, packed with boxes, folders, and sealed envelopes. One of the boxes had my apartment number written on it. Another had the name of my old neighbor, Rodriguez. And another had Lee's handwriting all over it, scribbled with dates, notes, and apartment numbers from tenants who had lived in the building going back 8 years. It was her archive, her trophies, her entire operation documented and hidden. My pulse hammered as I reached for the box with my number on it. It was heavier than I expected, and when I opened it, I froze. Because inside was something that made my mind go blank, my body go cold, and my plan shift from defensive to absolutely ruthless. It wasn't just evidence. It was leverage, and it was explosive. Inside the box labeled with my apartment number was something that didn't make sense at first. Not documents, not photos, not complaints. A binder, thick, heavy, organized with color-coded tabs like someone was building a case file or preparing for one. The first tab had my name on it. The moment I saw the first page, my throat tightened. It wasn't just a folder of petty notes or fabricated complaints. It was a full dossier on my life. Printed screenshots of my social media accounts. Old posts I'd forgotten existed. Notes about my work schedule. My fiancé's name, his job, his Facebook page. Copies of my Amazon deliveries. Dates and times I usually left for work. Records of which lights I left on when I went out. Even a list titled items they bring on trips, with bullet points she couldn't possibly know, down to what type of sunscreen I use. She had been watching me for over a year. I sat on the dusty floor of the storage room, flipping through the pages, feeling exposed in a way I've never felt in my life. My vision blurred once or twice, fear hitting me too fast, too hard. But then I reached the tab marked FINANCES, and that's where the twist hit. There were printouts, bank statements, credit card summaries, screenshots from accounts I'd never shared with anyone in the building. Half of the info wasn't even public. Some pages had been printed from inside a login portal. At first, I thought maybe it was identity theft. Maybe she'd hacked something. But then I noticed a pattern. The documents were clean, organized, and came from sources I recognized instantly. They were all from my landlord's office. Files I had given for income verification when I applied. Private documents a tenant is required to hand over, and trust won't be copied, shared, or weaponized. My landlord hadn't just been meeting with her, he had been giving her things. My private records, my application files, my emergency contact list, all of it. And under the finances section was a typed note, very short, very precise, income stable, marriage increases household total, makes eviction case stronger. Push during travel window. Use water angle. I read that sentence 4 times. It wasn't Lee who had come up with the attack on my apartment. It was him. Lee wasn't the mastermind. She wasn't the one running this operation. She was the blunt instrument. My landlord was the strategist. He was using her obsession, her anger, her willingness, to do his dirty work so he could cycle tenants out and bring in market-rate renters. And she was more than willing to play her part as long as she got what she wanted, my unit. That realization didn't just shock me, it rewired my entire plan. Because everything I thought was motivation, jealousy, obsession, territorial rage, was just the surface. The real twist came when I reached the last tab in the binder, Future Projects. It listed 6 tenants they planned to target next. 6. And at the very bottom, highlighted in yellow, was the biggest gut punch yet. If Op pushes back, activate Plan B, use the husband. My hands started shaking. My chest tightened. For a split second, I felt like I might throw up right there on the concrete floor. They had discussed my husband. They had a plan involving him, and the next few lines made my blood turn to ice. Spouse unaware of her previous issues. Pressure point exists. Use rumor of infidelity if needed. He will fold faster. I closed the binder, heart pounding in my ears. This wasn't just eviction. This wasn't just property. This was psychological warfare. They were prepared to attack my marriage, my stability, my reputation, everything. And suddenly, I understood something even worse. They'd done it to someone else before. Someone whose name I recognized on another tab. Someone who didn't just move out. Someone who divorced within 3 months of leaving. They had torn apart an entire life just to free up an apartment. And now they were coming for mine. But they had no idea the camera footage existed. No idea I had the binder. No idea someone in the building was feeding me information. No idea how far I'd go. I sat on the storage room floor holding that binder like it might bite me. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The pages were crammed with my life, tracked, measured, weighed, and dissected by 2 people who should have had zero power over me beyond collecting rent and offering a fake smile in the hallway. But the more I read, the more I realized something. This wasn't just greed. It wasn't even about rent control. It wasn't about property value or petty jealousy. This was systemic cruelty. Cold, calculated, rehearsed. And the reason behind it, the real reason, was buried in a folder labeled with the landlord's initials. It wasn't even in Lee's box. It was in his. Inside were documents I wasn't supposed to see. Private emails between him and a company I didn't recognize. Some corporate real estate flipper based in Orange County. The emails were blunt. We need the building cleared of legacy tenants to move forward. Remaining rent-controlled units must be vacated by Q4. Your bonus is contingent on successfully delivering empty units. There it was, plain, dead, simple. He needed to kick out every long-term, rent-controlled tenant so he could sell the building to a luxury developer. One who didn't want tenants grandfathered into decades-old leases. But there was more. Lee wasn't just helping. She was being rewarded. I found another email, this time from my landlord to the corporate buyer. One tenant in Unit 2B is aligned with the process and will be compensated with first choice of remodeled unit and reduced introductory rent in exchange for assistance. 2B. Lee's unit. He promised her a remodeled apartment, a better one. The building's showcase unit once the sale went through, and all she had to do was help him clear the building. But that wasn't the part that chilled me. Not the corporate greed, not the bribes, not even the tracking. Inside another folder were handwritten notes, his handwriting, not hers. Angry words scrawled like he'd been writing them in a rage. Tenants don't appreciate what they have. People think cheap rent is a right. They act like I owe them something. They're like squatters with paperwork. I read those lines slowly, feeling this cold wave move through me. This man didn't just want us gone, he despised us. He saw every tenant as an obstacle, not a person, a problem to clear, a pest to exterminate. Lee wasn't the mastermind, she was his weapon. A woman with too much time, too much bitterness, and just enough vindictiveness to do his dirty work without flinching. She craved control. He craved profit. Together, they were a perfect storm. But then I found the final piece, the thing that made my blood go cold in a way nothing else had. A recorded voicemail saved as a file in the binder. I put my earbud in and listened. Lee's voice, calm, cold, almost bored. If he won't leave, we'll make him. I don't care what happens to his marriage. People break all the time, he'll break too. Then a laugh, soft, satisfied, cruel. She wanted my apartment. He wanted the whole building. But the reason they went so far, why they were willing to destroy my home, my finances, my marriage, because they wanted to prove they could. Because to them, ruining tenants wasn't collateral damage, it was sport. People were pawns. Homes were leverage. And pain, my neighbor's pain, was just a byproduct of their ambition. There was no misunderstanding, no miscommunication, no accident. This was intentional, deliberate, predatory. They picked tenants they assumed were weak, tenants who didn't know their rights, tenants who would crack under pressure. And they had no idea they picked the wrong one this time, because I wasn't breaking, I was planning. And what I did next would make them regret ever touching my door. I didn't rush. That was the key. When you rush revenge, you make mistakes. Lee and my landlord were confident, too confident. They thought I'd fold fast, panic, break under the pressure. They thought 10 days of damage and a lawsuit would put me in survival mode. Instead, it pushed me into strategy mode. I spent 3 full days assembling everything. The hidden camera footage, the binder from the storage room, the photos, the emails, the eviction patterns, the notes about my marriage, the entire paper trail of their operation. I organized it into a digital archive, color-coded folders, high-resolution screenshots, labeled audio files, everything a lawyer or investigator would need. Then I made 4 copies, one for the police, one for the City Housing Authority, one for a tenant law nonprofit, and one for an attorney I hired after pulling every late-night recommendation thread in the Long Beach subreddit. But I didn't hit send yet, not until I made sure both of them were physically in the building. The day I finally executed everything, the sky was overcast, the kind of gray light that makes the hallway feel colder. Perfect. My landlord was in his office, arguing loudly on the phone. Lee was home. I could hear her fake Zen meditation music through her door. I stood in the hallway, binder under my arm, calm in a way that didn't feel like me anymore. I knocked. Lee opened her door wearing that smug expression she always wore when she thought she'd won something. "Oh," she said, pretending to be surprised. "Back from your honeymoon nightmare?" I didn't answer. I just held up the binder. Her face drained so fast it was almost funny. "Where did you—" "You left it in the storage room," I cut in. "Behind the water heater. Not a great hiding spot for a conspiracy this big." Her eyes flicked toward my landlord's office like she needed backup. I smiled, not kindly. "Don't worry," I said. "He's getting his copy too." I slid a USB drive into her hand. "This one's yours, has all the footage. Enjoy watching yourself commit a felony." She tried to speak, stammering, sputtering, denying, but I'd already walked away. I didn't knock on my landlord's office. I just stepped inside and dropped the binder on his desk. He didn't even try to hide his panic. He reached for it like he was trying to snatch a bomb before it went off. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, voice shaking. "No," I replied. "You have no idea what I've done." I opened my phone and tapped send. 4 emails, 4 massive evidence dumps, 4 different agencies and attorneys receiving everything at the same time. My landlord lunged forward, trying to grab my phone. I stepped back. "You're done," I said. "Both of you." He sank back into his chair like he'd been shot. Lee was in the hallway now, pale and trembling. Within an hour, city inspectors were at the building. By noon, the police were there too, talking to the maintenance guy, asking him questions he couldn't lie his way out of anymore. By evening, my landlord was escorted out in handcuffs for multiple counts of fraud, tenant harassment, evidence tampering, and violations I can't even list. And Lee, she cracked fast. She turned on him in under an hour, trying to save herself by admitting everything, from the break-in to the bribery to the fake water damage plan. Didn't help her, not even a little. Her charges stuck. She lost her apartment. She's banned from the building permanently and under investigation for her prior complaints involving other tenants. My lawsuit, dismissed instantly. My apartment, professionally restored at my landlord's expense. Every dollar of damage reimbursed. My rent control protected permanently. And my marriage, solid, unshakable, stronger than the mold that tried to take us out. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's methodical, patient. Cold, I didn't yell. I didn't threaten, I didn't break. I just showed them what happens when you underestimate the wrong tenant. In the end, I stood in my doorway, fresh paint, clean air, new floors, and watched the officers lead my landlord down the hallway. Lee followed behind him, crying. I didn't say a word. But inside, the line echoed so clearly it felt like I spoke it out loud. Next time they want my apartment, they'll have to break into a prison cell to ask for it.